Greetings, everyone. I am Michael Hingson, and you are listening to Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. Today, we get to talk with Travis Michael. That's his pen name and what he wants us to use, which is great. And it's his pen name because Travis is about to come out with a new book. And we will definitely talk about that in the course of the next hour or so. But Travis, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're really glad you're here.
Michael, it's a pleasure being here. We have had so many amazing conversations that I'm excited to see where this one goes.
Well, let's start with something that I love to do, which is learn a little bit about you as a younger Travis, where you started from, what you did, and kind of how you got where you are. I know you talked about jumping rope over the Mason-Dixon line, going from Pennsylvania to Baltimore. See, I know how to say that.
Baltimore,
Baltimore,
right.
yeah. And I lived there for 6 months. So, anyway, so tell us a little bit about Travis.
Yeah. So, I love to preface this with book recommendations. There's a really good book. It's called Outliers, and it's basically about people that have had access to unique things in their lives, right? What really defined your childhood and what drove you. And I was fortunate to be able to go to what's called a magnet school. So magnet schools, they had 4 big professional focuses, and it was environmental science, applied engineering, visual and graphic art, and mass communication. And so by 6th grade, you're taking a 2-period class with that specialty, and you transition every quarter. By 7th grade, you narrowed it down to 2. And by 8th grade, you're taking that specialty class the entire year through. And so, kids that go through those types of experiences and have access to more tools, as laid out in Outliers. Bill Gates, people don't realize that he worked at a college that had a supercomputer. So he actually worked in the lab of the supercomputer to have access to it. And then he was able to understand the different problems because he was there troubleshooting. He was their help desk, essentially. And he took that knowledge and that knowledge base and was able to expand upon it. So, I love talking to people and finding out what really drives them and being able to expand upon that as well. So, yeah, that was kind of me growing up, right? I try to take in as much as I could from a media standpoint. My focus was visual and graphic art. That has really driven me and my helping take people's visions and use my skills to drive their visions as well.
But you talk about really wanting to help people interact with people and help them. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth as such, but become better than they are. What caused you to have that kind of a wide scope and wide view of what you wanted to do? Because that's far beyond graphics.
Well, as a kid, you're like, I want to change. I want to make a change. There's something that's not right. There's something that's off. And I wanted, there's a lot of blocks in communication, right? There in how people communicate and the ability to communicate. And I, in middle school, I think it was in the early 90s when American Sign Language came into play. And whenever I moved up to Pennsylvania in 8th grade, I had access to there was a young girl in my grade that she was deaf, and they offered sign language classes. And I took some sign language classes. I know very little. I think I know the ABCs up to G, and that's where it stops. But I also knew that obviously there's a huge disconnect there, right, Mike? There's having the ability that there's some sort of even social block, right?
Mm-hmm.
in being able to communicate.
And that's something that has fascinated you and that you've wanted to kind of address. And you do that primarily through dealing with graphic arts, or do you go beyond that?
Well, I like to go beyond that, right? And I just got back from Chicago, and I ended up they stopped at the Wonder Museum, and I would highly recommend, if you have the opportunity to go to Chicago, definitely check it out. But it offered experiences, and any type of social engagement is an experience, and I want to be able to help those that have communication blocks be able to communicate in general. Being able to not be a fly on the wall, not
Right.
just a person in the back doing their best to read lips. And so whenever I was in Chicago, I think I'm very approachable, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, I'm being a tourist. I'm taking videos and pictures, and this gentleman approaches me, and he puts up one finger. He starts signing, and you could hear just in his voice, I'm deaf.
Mm.
And just like that's like all he was able to get out of his voice at a very low, gaspy tone. And then he was trying to sign to me, and I said, "Hold on 1 second. It just so happens that I'm developing an app for deaf people." And I pulled the app out, and it started transcribing my voice as I was talking, and I was able to communicate. And we had a wonderful conversation about, even whenever we were kind of walking and talking, that I had my chin down. I was kind of looking down and talking, and he's like, "Hey, I'm up here. I can't read your lips if your chin is down."
And I was going to ask, how did he understand you? Was it mainly lip reading, or I definitely want to learn more about the app, but did he read your lips? Is that how he understood you?
Yes, that's how he understood me. He, as his education revolved around being able to read my lips, being able to read lips, period, not just my lips, anyone's lips. And, they can hear low tones.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. We really didn't miss a beat in our conversations, as I was able to use the app. And if there was something that he was trying to communicate with me that wasn't getting through, he could just use my phone and type in what
and
he
could type it in.
And then it hit play, and it played out the speaker.
When I was in elementary school, and I don't remember what grade I was in, but it probably was third grade or earlier. I'm going to say the third grade. We were at a Halloween party at the school, and I ended up sitting across a table from a gentleman who was one of the janitors at the school. And we talked for a while, and occasionally I looked away, and he didn't necessarily respond, but then he volunteered that he had been deaf since Pearl Harbor, and that he communicated. He did not, his voice was as natural as someone who was a full hearing person, but he understood people by reading lips. And it's the first time I ever had exposure to that. And he was very kind and very generous with his time telling me about it, because I became, of course, very curious, being blind. And we had a wonderful conversation then, and several since, when I was still at that school. But it is fascinating. And he was as good as a body could be at reading lips. He certainly understood me.
So he was able to speak back to you?
Yes, he absolutely could speak back to me, and I had no clue that he was deaf because he served in the military. So this was like, what, 1958 or so.
Yep.
And he had been in the military and served at Pearl Harbor, which is when he became deaf. So he continued to be able to speak very well.
Ah, got you. That makes a lot of sense.
And I had no idea that he was deaf or anything other than just a person who could talk to me and I could talk to him. And then he told me about being deaf. And that was, I'm sure, in a sense, brave of him. But for me, it was fascinating, and I haven't thought about him very much since then, but this brought it up, and it just is fascinating that you're having success. How's the app doing?
Oh, it's wonderful. We're getting ready to launch the new user interface. It's a lot brighter, cleaner, and from there, because that's going to be the base design that we have. We're going to be pushing out a lot more demos and videos, because now this is okay. We've proved out the model; it works. We've got approval from Apple and Google for the model, and now we're getting ready to do a full launch with some really neat upgrades, including voice segmentation. So if you're interested, you can find that app over at bridgd.com. So that's bridged with no e.com, and you can download and be a test user right now. We're really excited to roll out the next version with some really cool updates, and ultimately expand out into other markets, including translations. And so stay tuned for some really awesome upgrades that are going to be incremental in connecting people, not only of speaking and non-speaking and hearing and non-hearing, but languages all across the globe as we build this thing out. So head over to bridged.com with no e and sign up as a test user. And we're really I'm super stoked about getting this thing out here, Mike.
When will the next upgrades and so on come out?
Yeah, so we're getting ready for phase 1B. New upgrades will be coming early fall. So I think August we're going to be really pushing it out, but we're probably going to have some short-term upgrades, including the new UI. Maybe not with the full scope, but we're really close to full implementation. I think we're just to keep this moving. I think there's just going to be. I think it's going to be like $1.99 a month, very minimal, just to being able to support the technology. So it's not a whole lot, but it's something that we can put into a humanitarian effort to being able to connect many people of many different languages.
Have you tested it with voiceover and so on to see that it's accessible from that standpoint?
Really, we're just focusing on the in real life engagements. You can customize. What's really beautiful about this app is the ability to then speak back. There's a lot of platforms where you can it just transcribes, but then the user has the ability to excuse me, to then type in a quick reply or select from a series of quick replies that are already loaded, kind of like your emoji. So you pull up it's like another keyboard, and you can actually program your quick reply keyboard based on maybe you're going to the doctor's office and you have some questions that need to be answered, and rather than picking them on the fly, you can add them into the keyboard under your favorites. You tap it, you add it to the keyboard, and then it plays through the phone speaker, and you can go down and you actually talk to your doctor about these things, and being able to, maybe you have questions for, just in general, just being able to converse. Pick a conversation type. It's going to help them be able to communicate better.
Well, the question I was asking, what I was getting at is that with like iPhones and with the Google Android phones, there are what are called screen readers. They're software packages that will verbalize whatever comes across the screen. And in this case, you're going deeper than that because you're also dealing with providing input by other means. And my question really was, have you explored making sure that the app is accessible using screen readers for people who may not be able to necessarily see everything that comes across the screen but needs to hear it? And that's a little bit different set of gestures. It is all part of what Apple provides. And the Google Android phones do, although I think Apple still does a little bit better job of it. But what VoiceOver is a software package that will verbalize whatever comes across the screen. It also means that if I needed to, I could type messages. If somebody isn't a lip reader, for example, I'm assuming that this is part of what the app would allow one to do, would be for me to be able to type and then it would appear on the screen. And VoiceOver would allow me as a blind person to be able to do that. So my question really was, are you looking at accessibility for the product across the board?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's going to be critical for those types of conversations, and being able, last time we talked, being able to add that. I've also had some very interesting conversations with Google, and I look forward to having more about exactly that, being able to provide accessibility and improve their accessibility.
I will have to download the app and experiment, and can give you some feedback regarding that, because a lot of app developers don't really understand what they can really do to make visual and non-visual, visual apps more usable by people who may not see what's on the screen. And so Apple provides a lot of information about that, but there are no requirements for any of that. So a lot of people don't necessarily see it, or they may make their app work, and then the next time a new update comes out, something gets broken because it doesn't become part of their process to keep that going. But I'll be glad to download it and take a look at it and see what it looks like. It sounds like it will be a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. That's, and we're going to be, constantly working on improvements. This is definitely a new space that we're looking to help people expand upon, and being able to have the ability to remove social norms where social norms aren't necessarily good, where deaf people are not communicating. They're typically standing in the back, and they're being a wallflower, and because you don't know, or most people in that group don't have the ability to communicate, whether it be ASL or what have you. So, or even having someone there that knows ASL that can translate, and then there's still that barrier. There's still that extra person. Whereas now you can kind of have that freedom to go to the store, go walk down the street, talk to someone randomly, and it really helps clear that pathway, right?
Right. What got you started doing this app?
Well, So the president of the company is deaf. So this is I'm doing this. I'm creating this app for my client, and his dad and I had been working together. Now his dad's the COO of the company, and his dad, Todd Tritch, pulled me aside after one of our meetings that we had been working together on. And he says, "Hey, Travis, one quick question. Can you build apps?" I said, "Well, yeah, absolutely. I just developed an app for a client out of Los Angeles, like an Uber-like app that people can just book trips to and from the airports just right from their website." I said, "Yeah, sure. Got a team. We're really starting to roll on some big projects." He says, "Well, my son was born deaf. And I've always had it in my head that when the technology was there, we would build this app together, and being able to help deaf people communicate in real time using this technology." And he says, we've done a lot of market research, and I think it's time just to start pulling the trigger on this and move forward. So we go through many conversations. I personally built the user interface, user experience that I've laid out for my developers. Wonderful team that put what we have together, put the kind of the engine behind the machine. Well, I kind of just had the brick and mortar, right? So it's been a wonderful experience, and we're picking up steam and some other really, really cool projects that we're looking to take some of these industries by storm with our creativity and how we start building markets in a positive way. Right. You're muted, by the way.
Can't trust technology. So what's the name of your company?
So my company is Trav Media Group. You can find me online if you just type in trav.media, there's no .com. It's just https:// Trav.media. I think if you look down here, yeah, right there, under my Zoom picture here, you can see my website. I work with doing, it's great because I have the ability to flex, and I can be doing these wonderful mobile apps, and then I can also kind of switch and do full-on marketing training and working with different teams on I'm able to kind of be more budget friendly for nonprofits, where I can, instead of doing it, I can train people, and then they can kind of work the plan. So, but I'm also I still enjoy doing logos. I still enjoy, I'm doing custom websites. I built a custom website for a client out of Georgia that does jet parts for private jets. Build them a custom e-commerce quoting system for their website, and it's been just steamrolling. Our SEO has been wonderful. The ability to add parts to their quoting system is pretty seamless, and then they can just quote out the product and get people into their funnel a lot quicker. So it's a lot of this is just problem versus solution. Mm-hmm. Finding the solution to unique problems, and identify the market. Again, I do my own market research and with search engine marketing, and I try to understand the entire funnel. And a company may have different a few different demographics that they're
Mm-hmm.
marketing to, right?
Right.
I could be working with marketers, and I can also be working with CEOs, so many
Uh,
different parts. And understanding supply chain as well, that's a big help.
yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to that, isn't there?
Yeah. It really is.
How long have you been doing this? How long has the company been around?
Yeah, so I started Trav Media in 2017. I was just out as um, you know, bootstraps in a computer, right, and just talking. I one of my first clients that they dealt in drones. They actually built drones. Um, that got me into some really cool spaces. Got a handful of clients in the aviation sector. One of them does the drone light shows.
Mm.
Um, so if you're in the aviation world, the trade show booths, I've done even like instructional design. So on the back of all those drones that for those light shows, there's a sticker that they put on them, and that sticker just happens to be my design. Very kind of honeycomb like. So it's really cool.
What did you do before you started Trav Media?
So same kind of space. Like I right out of college, I was doing animation boards and malls, and then they go, "Can you do business cards? Can you do logo design? And can you do brochures?" Next thing you know, I'm doing billboards. I'm animation for commercials. I was then really getting into animation with After Effects and some 3D stuff, and then I would give designs to web developers, and they were just butchering my designs, and I was like, stop it. Stop! Quit screwing up my design. They already approved this design, and you're not giving them anything remotely close. So I went in and started teaching myself CSS and HTML, and it kind of I can understand JavaScript and PHP, but I can't really write it. But now with Chat GPT, I'm also building unique plugins for that help me with my technology. So for instance, we have the website for the Bridged app, and then we have the app, right? And so they're two different things, but how do you get them to communicate with one another? So anytime someone registers on the app, a signal is then sent back to the website that actually has a database that can house that information. So we're using that developing a REST API that gives them the ability to communicate with each other. So that's been just the evolution of technology. And
explain that just a little bit more for me. I'm not quite sure I follow what that's doing.
Absolutely. So basically it's handling the user registration. So when you register on the mobile app,
right,
you said Michael Hingson at michaelhingson.com, and it goes to all of that information is then, so your profile is then created on our website in our database.
Right.
Now, that database doesn't necessarily have to be on the website. It could be on an entirely different database. But for the kind of being able to control the two, we're able to create that communication gap where so the app can then talk to the website. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I follow it. So by the app talking to the website, it obviously keeps the profile up to date. What does it do for the user in terms of communicating with others and so on?
Well, all it does is, if you lost your password, maybe you switch apps.
Okay.
So that's all it really handles, right?
Got it. Okay. What do you think about this whole discussion of AI, artificial intelligence, not widgets, but artificial intelligence products like Chat GPT and so on? They've become so sensationalized. What do you think about all of the furor around all of that?
Well, it was coming. It's been, we've been working with autocomplete now for how long, right? So like that was just a form of AI.
Yeah.
And now it's expanding into more of a user interface where the end user can dictate what the outcome should be. And so you really have to be able to figure out its best use cases for what you need.
Right.
People are afraid of the maliciousness behind it. I'm sure that there's some sort of kill switch. There would have to be.
The other aspect of it is that we keep hearing about all this potentially bad stuff with it, but look, we haven't eliminated the dark web, and we have the internet, and the internet is a way to get a lot of information to people, and has been since the early 1990s. So it's always going to be dependent on what we use it for and how we use it for. And hopefully we have enough bright people who will use it, and that will hopefully set some of the tone about don't do bad things with it because that's not appropriate. But the other part of it is, as you said, a kill switch, or we will have to probably put some governors on it because too many people are going to misuse it when they don't need to. They're going to go down a rabbit hole they don't need to go down.
But potentially, yes.
Potentially.
I'm not the all things on this, but my theory is use your powers for good.
Yep.
And we're getting ready to our next version with working closely with Google. Hopefully we're going to get an early release of their new language model that also includes AI. So being able to better provide a better transcription experience.
Mm-hmm.
So your voice to text is actually going to be more accurate, and also working on being able to segment people's voices and ultimately using that as a security model. So as we identify, this is Michael Hingson speaking, and in the back end, it creates a digital thumbprint that every time you're now speaking, that it actually authenticates that it's you.
Right.
And it will also provide security from AI duplication. That's one of the big focuses that we've been looking at, these different programs duplicating, Morgan Freeman. Like, obviously it's not Morgan Freeman speaking, it's the AI speaking like Morgan Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want to, basically safeguard. We want to safeguard your voice. There's been too many incidents that I've come across where voice has been captured, manipulated, and used for malicious.
Yeah. Although I've said to a few people jokingly, I know I'll really have arrived when I can hear John Wayne read The Hobbit. Can you even imagine that? But and the reality is, it's ultimately going to come down to how we use it and how we treat it, and it's going to be up to us, and that all comes down to moral compasses and so on. Here's a question regarding your app. Have you thought of, or is the capability coming or there, where a person who's deaf or hard of hearing can sign, the phone can pick it up and translate that into text or to voice that is spoken out by the phone?
There is technology. I've even seen gloves that have been developed. And a lot of that is, they're already using some of that movement stuff with robots, as they've been, focusing on, a robotic hand going and acting like a human hand, maybe even like creating bionic hands for people that maybe have lost a hand. And the transfer of energy and those types of things. So that's a little bit further outside of our scope. For this, we really wanted to start small.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. But the reason I asked the question probably is reasonably obvious. If I'm communicating with a person who is deaf and who doesn't speak, I can't see their signing. And so the question is, how will I communicate with them? Now, there are some technologies. For example, there is a device that a person can type on, and it will produce Braille at the other end. And obviously, you can type on a computer, and with voice technology, it can be heard. But it just seemed like it would be intriguing and interesting to think about the concept of the app being able to take advantage of the camera on a smartphone to see the person signing and verbalize that. But I don't know all the ins and outs of the pluses and minuses of how hard that would be. My first job out of college was actually working with Ray Kurzweil, the developer of Omnifont OCR. And that's when I also first got introduced to artificial intelligence, because his first machines would read print, and the more they read, the higher the confidence they gained of being able to read material, especially when characters were somewhat degraded, and it actually learned. But it just seemed like a logical, interesting idea might be for this, if signing is uniform enough where a software package could be taught to interpret signing. If that could be the case, it would be trivial to then output it to voice, because the phones already have the ability to talk anyway.
Is there anything that like would, I'm thinking of like hardware. Is there like a Bluetooth, maybe like a Bluetooth device where maybe as it would be typing, or as it would play out of the phone speaker, it could also be like felt,
Yeah. I mean, there are ways that there are refreshable Braille displays that I can connect to my iPhone, so that I can turn the speech off completely and use just the Braille display to read whatever's coming across the phone. But I'm thinking of the other end of it. It's the person inputting information. And so I was thinking that if a person who was deaf signed, how easy would it be for that signing to be interpreted? Because if, as you said, A through G, well, if somebody signs an A, can the phone be taught to recognize that A? If it can, then it doesn't matter what the output is. It could be outputted directly to the phone speaker. It could go to a Braille display or whatever. It's the recognition of the sign that's the issue.
Yeah. I think that might be something we tackle as we start looking
down the line.
Whenever we really wanted to get into AR, augmented reality, like the Google glasses and those types of things.
Yeah.
Because then as the person is speaking, you can then do like real life closed captioning. You could also do what you're talking about. So if I can actually, sign, and then the AR could then close caption the sign language essentially.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I could close caption it, but the idea is that if it recognized the signing,
Mm-hmm.
then the output part today is very straightforward. Yes, it could close caption it and put it on a screen, or since it's recognized it, it could just as easily go through the voiceover screen reader on the phone to verbalize it.
Yep.
None of that's the problem. The issue is recognizing what is being signed from the signer. And so, as you said, augmented reality, if that's the way to do it. But anyway, it's an intriguing idea. And it would open up some interesting vehicles for communication, which would be kind of cool. So in addition to developing apps, you work with other companies, and I know you're a kind of almost a mobile chief marketing officer in a lot of ways, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. The companies bring me in to kind of turn their brand around, and not just turn their brand around, but help them embrace technology for operational purposes. This, like, for instance, this new website has kind of acted as another sales tool. A website doesn't take a day off. It's there. So being a collection hub for that business, and finding unique problems, and getting their teams to kind of cheerlead the path forward. So working, I'll typically come in, I'll work very closely with the president, CEO, to understand where their mindset and leadership is, and help them prepare for the next steps, what their teams can be expecting, time that their teams need to be allocating to these different projects, right? It's not just me. I don't just come in and wave a wand and ta-da, here it is. Their teams, things will change, dynamics will shift. How a step that you once did, or maybe 3 steps that you once did, are now done in 1 step because a system was optimized. So that's where I come in, but I also have to make sure that maybe what was once done wasn't done in vain. Like it was there. Some things are grandfathered in that maybe aren't necessary, and a new system can be put in place. So,
companies are always looking for, or should be looking for, ways to improve their processes. And I've talked to a couple of people on Unstoppable Mindset who are very much involved in trying to help companies really reorganize basically their way of doing business, their way of getting things done inside the company, and so on. And so I appreciate exactly what you're saying, which is it's all about trying to become more efficient and trying to have the best processes possible.
Yeah, and there's a really good John Maxwell book. He's John Maxwell. If you read anything of his, you'll be better for reading it. He's just one of those guys that has a very, very deep message. And I just read his book. As good leaders ask great questions, and you really have to start asking great questions if you're in a position of leadership.
Yeah.
And I ask questions to prepare the companies that I work with. I don't ask questions to be nosy or judgmental. I ask questions because I need to understand what their starting points are. What have they done? Where are they at? And how can they move forward? And that's a lot. And then I provide training around different aspects around that model. and they've been proven to be very helpful and healthy in businesses understanding their why are they doing this, who are they talking to, and what is the message behind what they're doing. And I'll take all of that, run it through my marketing machines, my branding machines, design, technology audits, all of that, understand your industry and what your end goal is. And some of the companies, I work with companies that are profit, nonprofit, and defense, and they all have many different hats in many different industries. And one industry does this, but not this, and then another company will go, well, I do not this, and this, but we work together, and they're partnerships. Yeah. And there's something to be said about partnerships that can really be beneficial, especially when you find people that are moving in the same direction as you.
Well, and one of the most important things that we can do as human creatures is to ask questions. It is curiosity. It is trying to learn. And when you're asking questions of company leaders to help focus them, it is clearly also helping you.
Yeah. And one of the great questions is, what books are you reading?
Yeah.
What books are you reading? Because I need to know that they have, if there's a point that I'm trying to get across, it's going to be better if I have a client read a book or read a chapter, and then he can go, okay, I see what you're saying now. Here's how they overcame that. And for me, it's a wonderful thing. It's a, diagnose, prescribe model that helps me from I'm just giving book recommendations as, and that has even reading for me has been a huge shift.
Mm-hmm.
That was never me. That was never me. I was my kids are, my little cousin graduated the other day, and my grandma was like, "Oh my goodness, she's on the dean's list, or the the high dean's list," and forgetting being on the dean's list for so long. I was like, "That's wonderful," and I just kind of snickered. I go, that was never me.
I love to read a lot of fiction, which I do for relaxing. But I also do like to read nonfiction. One of my favorite books, and I quote it often in one way or another in speeches, is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, which is really, I think, the best short book that I've found that describes what a good team should be and how to get there. And I also love some of the Malcolm Gladwell books. I really enjoyed reading David and Goliath. Again, he puts a lot of things in perspective.
Yeah. Let's see. The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver is wonderful.
Yeah.
Being able to get yourself into a mindset. And this person is struggling in sales, and he's like, there's this guy in the back that I swear I maybe see once every week, and he's never here. And whenever he's here, he's just kind of feet up and kick back, and everybody seems to love him. And he's like, how does this guy do it? And he's kind of getting the same sales. He's like sales professional. But he's like what's the difference between sales and business development, right? And so that was that's when things really changed, and he was able to get understand mentorship. So if you're trying to understand mentorship, and that's a really good one as well. Let's see, Jocko Willink. If you like Jocko, I'm not really much of a reader. Audiobooks. I'm I'm writing and I'm reading all day long. So by the end of the day, my eyes
You
are
don't want to
tired.
read. Yeah. I love audiobooks, and they're becoming more prevalent. Audiobook sales continue to be on the rise, which is great. Even as print sales have gone down some, and I think ebook sales are going up, but audiobooks are great. And even for people who are blind and so on, the Library of Congress has a number of programs, and they're coming out with new programs to make access more easy and usable on things like smart speakers, like the Echo and so on, which is great. So I can turn a book on an Echo now and listen to it while I'm either cooking or maybe not even doing anything else, but I can do it from any Echo device in the house. Once the app, the skill was activated, then every Echo knows about it. So I can stop reading in one room and come back tomorrow and be in another room and tell it to pick up right where we left off, and it does, which is great. Makes reading a lot more convenient.
So for those who aren't familiar with how the Echo work, is it just you have like a main hub and then like speakers in like multiple rooms?
No. So the Echo is what they call a smart speaker. So there are Echoes, there are Echo Dots, and Echo shows a lot of different ones. Some have screens on them and so on. But you connect it to your network, and then it communicates with, I assume, the Amazon server that coordinates whatever goes on with Echoes. And so you can have 4 or 5 Echoes around the house, and I can go to one and I can say, what's the temperature outside? And it will tell me and so on. But there is the skill that actually the Library of Congress, the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped is creating. It's called My Talking Books. And it's a skill that runs on the Echo. So I can tell a device to open the app, My Talking Books, and then I can say, let's say I'm starting from scratch. I could say, open or find the Go-Giver. And assuming it's in the collection, which is not a given at all, but assuming it's in the collection, it will find it from my voice input, and then it can start reading it. So I can read for an hour and then quit and come back. And if I have several Echo devices around the house, I can go to any one of them because they all communicate with the same Amazon server somewhere in the world, and I can pick up right where I left off. But I find the Echo to be a really handy device for a lot of different things, whether it's even just doing weather. I use it to control my home security system, even turning the lights on and off and making sure they're off because I don't see them. And when my wife was alive, she used a wheelchair. So it was also a lot easier if she were on the bed to just tell the system to turn on a light. So it's really handy.
So do you typically walk around the house with the lights off, or?
Yeah, mostly I do. I don't need to have them on.
Yeah.
So my wife has passed. So we have solar, so it doesn't really matter a lot. But
I was just saying, I bet that helps you with your electricity bill, huh?
Yeah, it does a lot anyway. Yeah. But I don't turn the lights on at night. So far, it hasn't bothered the dog or the cat a whole lot. So it's just the 3 of us.
There you go.
But if there are sighted people in the house, I do like to help my light-dependent friends by turning the lights on for them.
Light-dependent friends. I love it.
Light dependency is a disability. It's just that technology has covered it up by Thomas Edison inventing the electric light bulb, but it doesn't mean that it isn't there. Well,
I love it.
Tell us about your book that you're writing.
Yeah. So, writing a book that it's really kind of about my background and, really challenging family dynamics and being able to help break generational curses. And, through some of the events that I've experienced that have kind of shaped me into, who I am as a person and, how I've developed some understandings about myself and kind of some really funny, really crazy, some very serious events and I really wanted to share this because a lot of the struggles that I went through, I went through myself, because it challenged a lot of my trust issues. And I understood that I went through it myself, and I'm sure that many others out there are going through challenging family dynamics as well. And I want to be able to help them, share my perspective, and maybe it helps them to kind of get over the some of their hurdles that they're having. And I'll kind of leave it with this. It's just, forgiveness isn't always about forgiving, or it's not for the other person.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is for you.
Yes.
And you have, and it's also about building a forgiving heart, because we're human. And if we can just be better humans and develop forgiving hearts, I feel like this world would be in such a better place. And being able to move forward, and even build boundaries. Sometimes you just because you forgive doesn't mean sometimes it's good to kind of create that space to allow yourself to grow. But but having those spaces and you're still holding on to that old junk,
you haven't really forgiven yet.
Haven't really forgiven yet.
And one of the things I talk about a lot are dogs, needless to say. And I talk about the difference between dogs and people, in that dogs do love unconditionally. I believe that. I watched a 60-minute show the other day that talked about the difference between dogs and wolves. And there are actually physiological genetic differences that they've been able to pinpoint, basically what they call the friendly gene in a dog, that wolves don't have. But I think dogs love unconditionally, but they don't trust unconditionally. What they are, however, unless they've truly been overly traumatized by something, dogs are open to trust. And that's the difference between them and us. We're always into what if this person really is not interested in gaining my trust, or what if they're going to abuse the trust and all that. And we have become so mistrustful that we tend not to recognize anymore the value in being open to the idea of trust. Now, if somebody doesn't earn our trust, okay, then we recognize that and we move on. But if somebody can, and we're open to that, what a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's being able to, create that kind of space for yourself. It's you have to be able to, trust yourself, that you've gotten this far, and being able to continue to push forward and build things, create things, and love, loving what you're doing. And if you're not loving what you're doing, then you need to take the time outside of what you're doing and figure out and push towards what you want to do.
Yeah. And recognize that there are probably lots of people out there who'd be really happy to support you.
You'd be shocked.
Yeah, absolutely would be shocked at the number of people who, if they really understood, would be willing to support you. Well, so what's the name of the new book, and when can we see it?
So the new book is called Honor Thy Fathers, and it really pushes towards the father dynamics, and push towards mentorship, and understanding how important it is to seek mentorship and being a good mentee. I first discovered mentorship in Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an international public speaking organization. Wherever you're at in the world, I'm sure there's one nearby you. If you're trying to get better at public speaking and shed that skin that has kind of kept you in this box, Toastmasters is a wonderful organization to be able to stretch your speaking skills in front of a supportive group of people who are trying to achieve similar results. So within that group, that's something that I had to really sink in. Within that group, they gave me a mentor, and I didn't know what a mentor was, and at some points I was probably not a really good mentee, if I'm being honest, because I was kind of in my own head doing my own thing. And I've graduated from that, and we're wonderful friends. And he's my public speaking mentor. Well, he's not. We've also developed great relationships in sales and talking to people and systems and growth. And he has a wonderful mindset. But then there's other things, and I've learned about mentorship and so many other places that have provided me wealth and growth. So the book is we're looking to come out with it in the fall, but we are going to launch the marketing for it on Father's Day, ironically. So you can catch Honor Thy Fathers, and I'll be promoting that. You can follow Trav Media online at Trav Media Group on Facebook, Trav Media, or I think it's trav.media on Instagram, on TikTok, trav.media as well. So,
do you have a picture of the book cover?
I'm designing that right now. So as soon as we get that out, I'll be sending that over to you, Mike.
Please, because we will put that in the show notes by all means.
Absolutely. I'm sure I think by the time that we publish this, I'll have the graphic ready for you.
Perfect. And
awesome.
Any other pictures and other things that you want us to have? Well, I want to thank you, Travis, once again for being with us today. This has been enjoyable and fun. We spent a lot of time talking about the app, and I'm going to have to go play with it and maybe give you some feedback, or at least learn a little bit myself, which will be kind of cool.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing your feedback, Mike.
But I really enjoyed today, and I hope you did as well. And I hope all of you listening did. We appreciate you doing so. So enjoy it and get a hold of Travis. Let him know. But I would appreciate hearing from you as well. We would love a 5-star rating from you wherever you're listening to Unstoppable Mindset. 5-star ratings are greatly appreciated. You can also email me at michaelhi, MICHAELHI, at accessiBe, ACCESSIBE.com. Love to hear any thoughts you have, as well as suggestions for others that you think we ought to have on Unstoppable Mindset. We're always looking to make new friends. You can also go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. Michael Hingson is MICHAELHINGSON.com/podcast. We'd love you to go there, and you can leave comments there as well. But either way, please keep us posted. Let us know. And Travis, likewise, if you know anyone who ought to come on, love to get your thoughts. And, we'll have to do this again, especially once the book is out and you start getting comments and all that. Would love to catch up with you again on this.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time, Michael. I greatly appreciate it.